Welcome to the deep dive. There's just so much information swirling around out there, it can be really overwhelming, especially with complex stuff like child development. So today we're diving deep into something specific, understanding and navigating ADHD support for kids. This is for you if you have a child with a diagnosis, or maybe you're just starting to wonder, starting to see some signs. We're drawing from a really thorough resource today. It's a parent guide, navigating ADHD support for your child. And our mission really is to pull out the absolute must-knows, the practical steps, and maybe even a few surprising things from this guide. Kind of a shortcut so you feel informed, but not, totally swamped.
Yeah, and getting that clarity is just so crucial because ADHD or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, it's a neurodevelopmental condition.
Yeah.
The guide spells this out clearly. We're talking characteristics like inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity. And these really do vary from child to child, but they can make a big impact. School, home life, friendships, it's also pretty common, affects around 9.8% of children in the U.S., according to the CDC's, their 2023 data. But what often throws people off, and the guide mentions this too, is how much things change depending on where you live. Diagnosis rates, the rules for diagnosis, even the treatment options. They can be really different country by country. It's definitely not the same everywhere.
Okay, that makes me think straight away. For parents listening, maybe they're seeing some of these behaviors, starting to suspect ADHD. What are the absolute first things the guide says they should do? Those crucial initial steps.
Right, okay. The guide breaks it down into 3 key starting points. First, and this is so important, document the behaviors. Don't just kind of notice things. Actively take notes. Write down specifics about inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity. And critically do this across different places.
So not just what you see at home.
Exactly. Home, school, maybe during play dates or sports. See how it shows up everywhere. That builds a much clearer picture.
Okay, makes sense. What's step 2?
Step 2 is consult your pediatrician. They're really your first port of call, your gateway to getting a professional evaluation. They can then refer you on, could be to a psychologist, a psychiatrist, maybe a neurologist, or a developmental pediatrician, someone specialized who can do a proper assessment.
Got it. Pediatrician is key. And the third step, you mentioned U.S. specifics.
Yes, the third one, particularly relevant if you're in the U.S., is to request school support. If you think ADHD might be affecting how your child learns, you actually have a right to ask the school for an evaluation. This could lead to services under an IEP, that's an individualized education program, or a 504 plan.
Okay, IEP or 504 plan. Those provide accommodations at school.
Precisely. They're designed to give tailored support right there in the classroom setting. And, what's really fascinating, as the guide points out, is even taking these first steps, the journey can look quite different depending on where you are geographically.
That's such a good point. It's easy to think support looks the same everywhere, but clearly not. So let's stick with the U.S. for a minute. How does the guide describe the system there? You mentioned variations.
Big variations, yeah.
Mm.
Within the U.S., the guide makes it really clear that services can differ quite a bit from state to state. We're talking about the kinds of resources available, how things are funded, even the specific state laws around special education.
Wow, okay. So practical advice for listeners in the U.S.
Definitely look into your specific state's Department of Education website. That's crucial. And also understand your Medicaid coverage, if applicable, for ADHD-related services. Those things really impact what support you can access.
And are there broader national resources the guide points to in the U.S., things anyone can access?
Oh, absolutely. The guide highlights several key ones. There's CHADD, Children and Adults with ADHD. Their website, chad.org, is packed with info, support groups, advocacy resources, really valuable.
CHADD, okay. What else?
The CDC also has an ADHD resource center online, cdc.gov/ADHD. Very reliable research-backed information there. And then there's understood.org. That's another fantastic one. Lots of learning resources, and they offer really practical help for navigating those IEPs and 504 plans we mentioned.
Understood.org, great. Any specific programs mentioned?
Yes, the guide also mentions specific parent training programs often found locally, maybe through clinics or schools. Programs like Triple P Positive Parenting Program and PCIT, which is Parent-Child Interaction Therapy.
Triple P and PCIT, what do they do exactly?
They're basically structured programs, backed by evidence, that teach parents real practical skills. How to manage challenging behaviors, how to strengthen that parent-child bond. Very hands-on.
That sounds incredibly useful. Okay, so that's a snapshot of the U.S. But you said earlier, and this is where I think it gets really interesting, how does this compare globally? What about, say, Europe?
Right, the guide really opens up the global perspective. And in Europe, the picture is definitely mixed. Awareness and support vary widely. Take the UK, for instance. You can get free ADHD assessment and support through the NHS, the National Health Service, which is great in principle.
But there's a catch.
The catch often is the waiting time. The guide notes that parents can face really long waits for assessments and then for services, and that can be incredibly tough when you need help.
I can imagine. Are there UK-specific resources?
Yes, the ADHD Foundation, UKADHDfoundation.org.uk is a major one there.
Okay. What about other parts of Europe? Germany, France, Scandinavia?
In places like Germany, France, and the Scandinavian countries, the guide notes there's generally growing awareness. You tend to find a mix of both private and public options for getting assessments and support. And that support often includes things like parent training, getting accommodations set up in schools, social support networks, and sometimes medication, if that's deemed clinically appropriate.
And outside Europe and the US, what does the guide say generally?
Well, it does briefly mention that in quite a few other parts of the world, widespread awareness and formal support systems for ADHD might still be in earlier stages of development, which of course adds another layer of challenge for families there.
That really highlights the importance of global networks then, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And the guide mentions organizations working on that front, like ADHD Europe, that's adheurope.eu, and the World Federation of ADHD, wfadhd.org. They're key players in sharing knowledge and advocating globally.
And virtual communities too, I imagine.
Hugely important. The guide points out how powerful online groups and forums have become. They connect parents across borders, offering shared experiences and resources, especially for those who might feel really isolated locally. It helps bridge those gaps.
Okay, so we have this picture of varying systems. Let's connect it back to what actually works. What does the research, synthesized in this guide, tell us about the most effective interventions for ADHD?
Right. This is what the guide pulls together the evidence. And behavioral parent training, or BPT, really stands out. It's shown to be highly effective, especially for younger kids with ADHD.
Why is BPT so emphasized, even sometimes before considering medication?
Well, it's because it directly empowers parents. You learn concrete strategies to manage behavior, create positive routines, and really strengthen that relationship. It builds foundational skills for both the parent and the child that last a lifetime. It's not just about symptom reduction. It's about building skills and improving family dynamics.
That makes a lot of sense. What else is highlighted?
School accommodations are another big one. The guide gives practical examples, things like structured routines in the classroom, making expectations really clear, allowing for breaks.
These aren't just nice to haves.
No, not at all. The research shows these kinds of adjustments significantly improve a child's ability to focus and reduce disruptive behaviors in the school setting. They're evidence-based.
Okay. And medication.
Medication, yes. Specifically, stimulant medications are mentioned as being very effective for reducing the core symptoms inattention, hyperactivity in many children. But the guide is careful to note it's not always the first line of treatment, particularly for younger kids. Often, behavioral approaches like BPT are tried first or used alongside medication.
Right. It's not an either-or situation necessarily.
Exactly. And that leads to the next key point, multi-modal treatment. Decades of research, including that big MTA study back in 1999, show that the best long-term results usually come from combining approaches.
So therapy plus school support plus family training.
Yes, hitting it from multiple angles. It's a holistic approach.
Any other specific therapies mentioned?
The guide also highlights social skills training, which can be really helpful for kids struggling with peer relationships and executive function coaching.
Executive function coaching, what does that target?
Executive functions are those brain skills we need for planning, organizing, managing time, staying focused, remembering instructions. Skills often challenging for kids with ADHD. Coaching helps them build practical, real-world strategies for these things.
I see. And you mentioned sensory needs earlier.
Yes, for some children, occupational therapy focused on sensory processing can be incredibly helpful. Sometimes the way a child processes sensory input, sounds, touch, sights, can really impact their focus and behavior. OT can help with that.
Okay, that's a lot of effective strategies. So translating that research into action, what are the immediate practical things the guide tells parents they can do? How can they effectively advocate starting now?
All right, the guide gets very practical here. First big tip, especially for U.S. parents, know your rights. It emphasizes that schools are legally required to provide services under laws like IDA and Section 504 if ADHD is impacting a child's learning. You have leverage there.
That's empowering. What else?
Ask for accommodations. Don't be afraid to specifically request things that could help your child in the classroom. The guide lists examples like preferential seating, maybe near the teacher, away from distractions, allowing breaks during long tasks, getting extra time on tests, or even finding ways to build movement into learning.
Concrete examples are always helpful. Anything else?
Yeah, get outside help. Don't feel you have to do it all alone. The guide suggests looking into things like occupational therapy, as we mentioned, for sensory stuff, or finding an executive function coach, and joining parent support groups connecting with other parents walking a similar path can be invaluable.
Absolutely. And, that brings up something really important that often gets pushed aside when we're so focused on the child's needs. What about the parents? This sounds like a demanding journey.
Oh, incredibly demanding. And the guide really stresses this point with a lot of empathy. Parent burnout is absolutely real when you're raising a child with ADHD. And it's not just about feeling tired. There's research. The guide mentions a study by Thiel and others from 2013 showing that high levels of parental stress can actually make a child's behavior worse and hinder their progress with interventions. It creates a tough cycle.
Wow. So parental well-being isn't just secondary, it directly impacts the child's success.
Exactly. So the guide provides some really essential self-care strategies for parents. It's not selfish. It's necessary. Things like joining those support groups we talked about, just knowing you're not alone makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
Seeking respite, even short breaks can help you recharge. Considering therapy for yourself as a parent, especially if you're dealing with your own anxiety or depression, which is common. And, the basics, prioritizing healthy routines, trying to get enough sleep, focusing on nutrition, movement, maybe incorporating some mindfulness practices. Taking care of yourself allows you to better care for your child.
There's a quote in the guide that just really captures this perfectly, and I think it's worth repeating. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Mm.
It just perfectly sums it up. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish at all. It's actually essential. It's about building your own strength and resilience for this journey, which ultimately helps your child so much more. So as we wrap up this deep dive, the core message from the guide seems clear. Every child's journey with ADHD is unique. Your advocacy, your love, your understanding, those are just paramount. And whether you have that formal diagnosis already or you're just starting down this road asking questions, seeking help, please know you are definitely not alone.
Absolutely. And keep learning. Keep asking questions. That continuous learning is so valuable. The more informed you become, the more confident you'll feel navigating all of this.
Exactly. And perhaps embrace that idea of progress, not perfection. That really resonated from the guide. It's about the small steps forward, not reaching some impossible standard overnight.
Right. So maybe here's a final thought for you to consider, something to mull over after listening. How might intentionally dedicating time and energy to your own well-being actually shift the whole dynamic of supporting your child? How could it potentially transform this journey from feeling like maybe an exhausting marathon of challenges into something more like sustained growth, connection, and resilience for the whole family?